Hello class, Mr. C here. We are in skill R, which is solving quadratics using square roots. So I know it's been a while, right? It's almost been 2 weeks, but we are still talking about quadratic functions, quadratic equations. And if you remember, we said when we're solving a quadratic equation, we're asking what is the zero of the equation or what is the solution. We're just saying when does the equation equal 0, or when does y equal 0? Or how we did it before in our first skill is how many times does it actually cross the x-axis, right? Does it cross the x-axis? If it does, that gives us a solution. In this case, we said that we have one solution if it crosses the x-axis at one point, which would be right here. If it crosses the x-axis at 2 points, it has two solutions. If it doesn't cross the x-axis, and remember x-axis is that horizontal line, not the vertical one. If it crosses the x-axis at no point, it means that there's no solution, which means that no matter what number we plug in for x, we are never going to get y equal to 0, right? Because at this line right here, we are saying that y equals 0. So if I have this line here, whatever x values here, doesn't matter, every y value is always equal to 0. So that one point will give me y equal to 0. Okay, so what if I'm not doing this by graphing? I know most of you are like, well, I have Desmos. Well, there's also another way that we can solve this, and we can find the correct values without having to plug these into Desmos. So what I have here are some equations, and I apologize because this one's kind of blurred out because of my light, but I'll just tell you the values of it and we'll go through it. But we will find out how to calculate these solutions or find the solutions, the number of solutions, using square roots, using inverse operations, okay? So the first one I have here is y equals x squared plus 7. Again, you might not be able to see it because of the blare, but what we're trying to say is when does y equal 0 and what x value will give us y equal to 0. So I'm going to rewrite this equation. Okay, I have y equals x squared plus 7. I'm going to rewrite it as 0 equals x squared plus 7, right? Okay, does it hit the x-axis? Do I get a value equal to 0 in this case? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this. I'm going to solve for x, just like I've done in any other equation. If I have a linear equation, I'm going to solve for x. If you remember, something we talked about at the very beginning of the year was something I like to call SADMAP, right? Everyone's favorite. And all we're saying there with SADMAP is that we're just doing the inverse operations of the order of operations, right? So we're going to undo subtraction, addition, division, multiplication, and then exponents in parentheses. So my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this addition, right? Pretty basic. We're just doing our typical steps here, right? I'm going to do minus 7 to both sides. Very common mistake that I see here is once we've subtracted 7 from both sides, we're left with x squared equals negative 7. And sometimes some of us will say, oh, well, I got my x. That's what I want. X squared equals negative 7. No, I want to find out what x is. Okay? Now, what I have to do is I have to undo that exponent. That's the E part of my SADMAP, right? I have to undo that because I want to have x alone. In order for me to undo an exponent, I have to square root it, right? Those are inverse operations. So I'm going to square root both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Fair and balanced as all things should be. All right, so I'm going to square root that. This is going to cancel out to just give me x. Now, on the left side, I'm left with square root of negative 7. I don't know what that is, but if we remember, we should remember this from Algebra 1. And for those of us who took Algebra 2, right, negative 7, I cannot square root that. Why can't I square root that? Reason being is because I have to know what the square root actually means. Square root means what number times itself will give me the number in the little box, right, in the little square root. So I have to have some number times some other number, right? Just like if I had the square root of 4. Most of us are saying, oh, it's just 2. Well, the reason being is because what number times itself gives me the number 4? Well, that would just be 2 times 2. But there's a problem when we have negatives, and the reason why we cannot take the square root of a negative number is because I don't have a number multiplied by itself to equal a negative number. If you remember your signs back from, I think, 7th grade, right? If I multiply two negatives together, I get a positive. And if I multiply two positives together, I also get a positive. I can never take a number, multiply it by itself, or square it, and get a negative number, right? So I can't do that. Since I cannot do that, that is what we're going to call no solution. So if I get to this point where I have to take the square root of a negative number, I have no solution. So actually, again, without me having to go and plug this into Desmos, I found out this has no solution. So we're going to write that right here. No solution. Okay? And that's something to keep note. If we solve for x and we get this irrational expression, right? Negative 7, the square root of negative 7, then it has no solution. Okay? And it's easy as that. Let's try the next one. All right, so I have a parentheses there. Y equals x minus 3 squared. Okay? Well, again, I want to find the solution to it, which means I want to find out when y equals 0. What x value is going to give me y equal to 0? So let's try this. I'll try this in a different color. Spice things up. Right? I want to make y equal to 0. 0 equals x plus 3 squared. Okay, same thing here. What x value do I have to plug in to make this equal to 0? Okay, I had no solution before. Now I'm going to solve for this one and see if I have a solution. Well, I have 0 equals x plus 3 squared. How do I undo this to get x alone? Well, again, I have to follow my SADMAP rules, right? In this case, usually parentheses goes before exponents, but here, if I'm undoing it, my exponent is going to happen before parentheses, which means I have to undo my exponent, then I can deal with parentheses. And that's a huge mistake that I see a lot of times. We'll make that error. We'll say, oh, okay, I just have to undo these steps. I see a plus 3. I'm just going to subtract both sides. That's not how it works. I have to take the square root of both of these. So I'm going to square root it. Now, if I take the square root of x plus 3 squared, I'm just getting rid of that exponent there. So on the right side, I'm left with x plus 3. On the left side, I'm just left with 0. The square root of 0 is just 0. Again, square root means what number times itself equals the number in the little box, in the little house, as some might say, right? Well, the square root of 0 is 0, because 0 times 0 is 0. So now I'm left with 0 equals x plus 3. Easy equation for me to deal with here. And I'm left with x equals negative 3. And that's what we're going to call one solution, right? Just like we did at the beginning of the year, we're just doing a quick linear equation. We're doing one solution. It just means that when x is negative 3, that's the only time that we're going to have y equal to 0. Okay? That is one solution. That's it. We won't have another solution other than if x equals negative 3. Okay? So again, we can just do this by solving using our inverse operations. All right, let's look at one more. Y equals x plus 4 squared minus 16. Okay? Again, I'm trying to solve for this, and maybe I'll give us some more room, so I will erase over here. And I want to solve for when y equals 0. So 0 equals x plus 4 squared minus 16. Okay. Again, I want to undo the steps, and I want to get x by itself. Okay? And again, I want to remember SADMAP. Hopefully you can see that. If you can't, I'm just writing it for myself. SADMEP. First, I'm going to start with subtraction or addition. And here I have subtraction. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Again, my goal in doing this, in doing SADMAP, is I want to get x by itself. Okay? So Negative 16 and positive 16 cancel out. On the left side, I'm left with 16. On the right side, I'm left with x plus 4 squared equals 16. Okay? Now, again, just like I did before, I want to undo my exponents before I undo my parentheses. I'm not going to subtract 4 from both sides because that's in the parentheses. I want to square root both sides. So square root that and square root the left side as well. Okay, on the right side, I'm going to be left with x plus 4. And now on the right side, or sorry, on the left side, I have a square root of 16. Well, that just means what number times itself equals 16, and that's 4. But something to remember is that when I square root something, I'm going to have a positive and a negative value. So a lot of times you'll see this, positive and negative. Why? Again, because square root means what number times itself equals the number in the little square. Well, I can do positive 4, which is 4 times 4 gives me 16. But also, I can do negative 4 times negative 4 to also get me positive 16. So remember, when we square root these, I'm going to have a positive and negative value. Okay? The reason why we didn't do this here was because, again, this didn't work. And the reason why we didn't have a plus or minus 0 is because 0 is just 0. There's no plus or minus 0. But if I have a number and I square root it, don't forget to put our plus, our positive, and negative. Okay? Now I have two different possible answers, and this is leading to two solutions, right? But I have two possible equations. I have it if x plus 4 equals 4 or x plus 4 equals negative 4. So let's do this here. Let's start with 4 equals x plus 4. That's our first possible answer. The other one is negative 4 equals x plus 4, right? These are my possible answers. And I'm going to solve for x. I'm going to get two different numbers. Okay? If I solve here, I'm going to do minus 4 to both sides. I get x equal to 0. So that's a solution. And then here, I have negative 4 equals x plus 4. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And if I do negative 4 minus 4, if I have a debt of $4 and add another debt to it, I'm going to get negative 8. And there I have, as you can see, two solutions. Okay? So two solutions for this one. Okay? So again, we're just doing inverse operations, and we're able to find the correct values that give us y equal to 0. Right? And if I went back into this and I plugged these into the equation at the top, they would get my answer equal to 0. All right, so let's look at this quick word problem. We have here a right triangle, and we have the lengths of the sides are 2x and 2x, and here we have this length, the longest side, which is the hypotenuse, of 20 feet. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use one of our old friends, the Pythagorean theorems. If you remember, you have right triangle, means that the side lengths, if you square them and add them up, they will equal the side length of the hypotenuse, right? Or in the formula is called a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, that's Pythagorean theorem. We're going to use this information, we're going to use what we just talked about with this skill to solve for this. Okay, if I were given this question, I can't graph this into Desmos, but I can solve it using our square roots. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to plug in what we have. We have 2x. We don't know what x is. We want to find out what x is. So let me actually just write that here. Right? X equals question mark. We don't know. Let's solve it. Okay? So I have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that means I have 2x, which is my a, plus 2x, and we're going to square both of them, is equal to c squared, which is 20 squared. Okay? Now, I'm going to square all these and then solve for x. So 2x squared is 4x squared. The quantity 2x squared is also 4x squared. And then 20 squared is just 20 times 20, which is 400. Right? Now, again, I want to solve for x. What should x equal? Well, here I have 4x squared plus 4x squared. I'm going to get 8x squared. Next step, I'm going to divide both sides by 8. And here I'm left with, I believe, 50. X squared equals 50. Yes, it's a nice even number. Okay. Now, my final step is, my answer is not 50. Because that's what x squared equals. But I want to find out what x equals. So my final step is I'm going to square root both sides. And my answer here is x equals, and I can write it like this. The square root of 50, that's a really nasty number, and if I plug that into a calculator, I'm going to get like 7.1 something. So I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to leave it as square root of 50. But remember, I have to put in positive and negative, right? X equals plus or minus square root of 50. Now, my question to you is this the correct answer? Is x equals positive, negative, square root of 50 the correct answer? Okay, so we should be saying not quite, and here's why. Well, we're dealing with length, okay? So in this case, I can't have x equal negative square root of 50 because that would be saying negative square root of 50 feet, and I can't have negative feet, right? I don't know what you did over spring break. I did very normal things. I didn't try to break some kind of space-time continuum and try to make negative 50 feet. That wouldn't work. Okay, so I only have one solution in this case, and that answer is just the positive square root of 50. Okay, and that's my answer.